Survival horror is one of the biggest and most popular genres in gaming, and it also just so happens to be one of the hardest to really do well. When done right, these games are heart-pounding, tense, and completely immersive. When done wrong, well, let's just say they're terrifying for entirely different reasons. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and click on the links in the description to vote on upcoming content. While some of the best games in the genre are actually incredibly different from one another, they usually have a number of key things in common. An awesome and enthralling story, creepy and intense atmosphere and music, and perhaps the most important thing of all, controls that actually work.
Is she really alive? Waiting for me?
The forefather of the whole genre is undoubtedly 1992's groundbreaking Alone in the Dark. Developed by Infogrames with a story and setting based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, the game took the world by storm with its unique gameplay, which would come to define the whole genre. Don't believe us? Well, just ask the Guinness Book of World Records Gamers Edition, which named it the first ever 3D survival horror game. Did that really need a world record? I mean, we're making this video, right? So who are we to judge? Anyway, its success spawned a number of sequels, and even a couple of movies. But the true success can be seen in the way that it went on to spawn and influence the entire category. Which is part of what makes 2008's Alone in the Dark such a travesty, and such a slap in the face not only to its predecessor, but the genre as a whole. The game actually has two developers. Eden Games worked on the PC, Xbox 360, and PS3 versions, while HydraVision Entertainment developed the versions for the PS2 and Wii. While HydraVision maintained the overall plot of the game, they also made many changes, including overhauling and changing some levels, adjusting some of the characters' roles and backstories, and making the way you interact with objects and the atmosphere drastically different. Whether it was related to these changes or the lower graphical capabilities of these systems, this version did even worse with critics, putting yet another nail in what was once a world record-setting series' coffin. The story was seen as the least broken element of the game, with most critics and gamers finding it at least somewhat engaging and interesting. You play from the perspective of Edward, who joins up with a few other characters in an attempt to keep Lucifer himself from invading the earthly realm using an unlimited power given to him by a set of stones.
What's with this f***ing stone?
The catch is, of course, that Edward happens to be in the possession of one of these stones. Along the way, you must fight monsters and other creatures in a battle to save the world from chaos and destruction. Sounds pretty straightforward, right?
Hurry! We must go to the museum before he's gathered an even larger army.
Whose army? What are you talking about?
Everything okay?
No, it's not okay. He's hurt bad and I'm losing my mind.
Well, now that we've covered the sorta good, let's get into the bad. The game actually offered an interesting and somewhat ambitious feature that allowed the player to interact with pretty much all of the objects in the environment, grabbing and throwing objects at will. Because of this, however, it's hard to figure out what exactly you are supposed to be doing at any given time. The game's progression and tasks, in large part, are a mixture of trial and error to find the step or action needed to move forward. On top of that, the combat is simplistic and very repetitive. The atmosphere leaves a lot to be desired, despite having some decent elements, such as the fire effects, but that doesn't make up for the horrible interface. Add in the abundance of glitches and bugs, and what you end up with is one frustratingly awful experience. We've covered the good, the bad, and now we're getting into the ugly, and we mean really, really ugly. While the bugs, glitches, and tedious progression are enough to make you want to put down the controller, the controls themselves will make you want to throw it across the room. Horrible hit detection, practically impossible use of driving controls, and horrible camera perspectives effectively made gamers wish for the end of the world. But perhaps the most egregious of all is the fact that the follow-up to the game that started it all, as far as survival horror goes, simply isn't scary. Sure, it's kind of moody, maybe even creepy, but scary? Not even a little bit. What makes a good survival horror game is the sense of dread and fear that comes when you realize that whatever lurks around the corner could lead to your quick death. In Alone in the Dark 2008, you'll have an even harder time fighting the controls than you will have any of the enemies thrown your way. The original was groundbreaking because it required the player to think their way out of a treacherous situation, while any challenge you might face in the 2008 version can basically be solved by flailing a 2x4 at any demon you come across. And that and everything we've already mentioned is enough for us to name 2008's Alone in the Dark the worst horror game of all time.
So you're still alive?
Hey,
I guess those fissures didn't feel like eating a pile of shit like you, huh?
Shut up.
Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.